I remember the day I had to tell my family I was walking away from everything we'd built together. Not from acting that would have been easier to explain. No, I was walking away from something far more valuable, the illusion of control. The carefully constructed life where success meant holding on tight, accumulating more, protecting what was mine. My sister looked at me like I'd lost my mind. My closest friends went silent on the phone, and honestly, standing there in my kitchen at 3 in the morning, staring at a bank statement that could have secured 10 generations, I wondered if they were right. But let me take you back further. Because this decision didn't start in that kitchen. It started in a hospital room, when I was barely holding myself together. And the world expected me to fall apart. When Alexandra and I lost our daughter Ava, still born at 8 months, something inside me shattered that I didn't even know could break. People talk about grief like it's this wave that crashes over you, but that's not quite right. It's more like drowning in slow motion while everyone around you is breathing normally. The strange part, I had to return to set 3 weeks later. I had contracts, obligations, hundreds of people depending on the production schedule. So I showed up, I said my lines, I hit my marks, and every single night, I drove home to an empty house that was supposed to have a nursery, and I sat in that unfinished room wondering what the point of any of it was. Here's what nobody tells you about that kind of loss. The world doesn't stop. The industry certainly doesn't stop. I remember a producer, someone I'd worked with for years, pulling me aside and saying, "We need the old Keanu back. The focused one." As if grief was a costume I could take off between takes. As if I could simply decide to be unbroken. I smiled and nodded because that's what you do when you're barely surviving. You perform even your survival. But something happened in that performance. Night after night, sitting in that empty room, I started to realize I'd been performing my entire life. Not just on camera, but off it. Performing success, performing strength, performing the version of myself that everyone needed me to be. And the loss of my daughter, as devastating as it was, created a crack in that performance wide enough for me to see through it. 2 years later, Alexandra died in a car accident. If losing Ava broke something in me, losing Alexandra dissolved it entirely. I remember standing at her funeral, and this thought came to me that I've never admitted publicly until now. I felt relief. Not that she was gone God, no, but relief that I no longer had to pretend the pain wasn't everywhere. Relief that maybe, finally, I could stop performing and just be in it. Be in the terrible, honest, raw truth of what life actually was. That's when I made my first unexpected decision. Everyone assumed I'd take time off, disappear, maybe even quit acting. Instead, I took every job offered to me. I worked constantly. I threw myself into the Matrix sequels, into other projects, into 16-hour days that left me too exhausted to think. My family worried I was running away from grief through work. They staged what I can only describe as a gentle intervention, sitting me down and asking if I was okay, if I needed to slow down, if I was using work to avoid healing. I told them I was fine. I told them work was my therapy. But here's the truth I couldn't articulate then. I was conducting an experiment. I was testing whether the thing I'd built my life around, this career, this identity as an actor, could fill the void that loss had created. I needed to know if success could be a substitute for meaning, if staying busy enough could count. As being alive, the answer came not during some dramatic moment, but during the most mundane one imaginable. I was sitting in my trailer between takes, eating terrible craft services coffee and a sandwich I didn't taste, when a young crew member knocked on my door. He was maybe 22, nervous, probably sent by the assistant director to tell me they were ready for me. But he just stood there for a moment, and then he said, "Mr. Reeves, I just wanted to say thank you. My mom died last year, and watching you keep going, it helped me keep going too." He left before I could respond, and I sat there with this half-eaten sandwich, and I started crying, not the dignified kind, but the ugly, body-shaking kind, because I realized I'd gotten it completely backward. I thought I was performing my way through grief, using work as a shield. But what if that young crew member saw something true? What if the performance was actually me being present, showing up even when it hurt, being honest about the difficulty of continuing? What if the most authentic thing I'd ever done wasn't any character I'd played, but simply the act of not giving up? That realization led me to my next unexpected decision, the one that really confused my family. At the height of my career, when I could have commanded any salary, I started giving money away. Not in the public, philanthropic sense, though I did that too, but quietly, directly. I gave millions to the special effects and costume design teams on The Matrix. I bought motorcycles for the entire stunt crew. I funded leukemia research without putting my name on it. I set up a private foundation that I barely talked about publicly. My business manager thought I was having a breakdown. He'd come to me with spreadsheets showing how I was systematically dismantling my own wealth. And he'd say things like, "Keanu, you need to think about your future. You need security." And I understood his concern. In Hollywood, in America, in the world we've built, your worth is literally measured in dollars. To give it away seemed crazy, seemed like financial suicide, seemed like the behavior of someone who'd stopped caring about their own survival. But here's what I'd learned in those years of loss. I had died already. Not physically, but the person I'd been, the one who believed success meant accumulation, safety meant control, love meant possession. That person was gone. And the person who remained had different priorities. That person had looked directly at the worst thing that could happen and realized that what we're taught to fear and what actually destroys us are different things entirely. I remember having dinner with my sister. This was maybe 6 months into my financial giveaway phase, and she asked me point blank, "Are you okay? Are you depressed? Is this some kind of elaborate goodbye?" And I understood why she'd think that. In her framework, in the framework we're all raised with, giving away your security is suicidal. But I looked at her and said, "I've never been more alive. I've never been more sure of what matters." She didn't believe me. How could she? I was describing a color she'd never seen, a frequency she couldn't hear. So I told her this. When Eva died, when Alexandra died, I didn't lose everything. I lost one thing, the illusion that holding tight to anything keeps it safe. Everything I was clutching, all that control and planning and securing, it didn't protect me from anything. It just made me rigid. And when the real losses came, I shattered. But you know what you can take from me? This moment, this meal with you, the fact that I showed up to set today and made some young people laugh, the sunset I saw on my motorcycle ride this morning. Nobody can take those because they're already gone, already complete, already perfect, exactly as they were. She cried, I cried, and nothing really changed between us, because how could it? We were operating from different philosophies of existence. But I planted a seed that day, and years later, she'd tell me it changed how she saw everything. The decision that really shocked everyone came next. I started choosing roles not based on money or prestige, but on something harder to define. I turned down massive franchises. I said no to films that would have cemented my status as a bankable action star for another decade. Instead, I took strange projects. I worked with first-time directors. I appeared in independent films that barely got distributed. I did theater. I took a role in a film that paid me scale union minimum because I loved the script. People thought I was tanking my career. Articles were written about my strange choices and decline. My agent would call and ask if I was sure, if I understood what I was walking away from. And the honest answer was, I didn't care. Because I discovered something that changed everything. I discovered that the feeling I got from an 8-figure paycheck and the feeling I got from a truly honest moment in a scene were not even close to equivalent. The money gave me a brief spike of validation. See, you're successful, you're wanted, you're valuable, that faded almost immediately. But that moment of truth in a scene, when you stop acting and start being, when the character and yourself merge into something real, that stayed with me. That fed something the money never touched. I started to understand that my grief had shown me a shortcut. Most people spend their whole lives building these elaborate structures of meaning careers, bank accounts, status symbols, carefully curated identities because they haven't yet faced the thing that destroys all of that in an instant. I'd faced it. I'd been in that hospital room. I'd gotten that phone call about the accident. I knew viscerally, in my bones, that none of those structures meant anything when real loss came. So why spend my remaining years building sandcastles? Why not just live? This philosophy led me to start my motorcycle company, Arch Motorcycle. People saw it as a vanity project, a rich actor's hobby. They didn't understand that I was building something entirely different. I wasn't trying to create profit, though it needed to be sustainable. I wasn't trying to build a legacy, though I cared about the craft. I was trying to create a space where the work itself was the reward, where the act of building something beautiful with your hands, of collaborating with master craftsmen, of solving problems for the pure pleasure of solving them, was the entire point. I'd spend 12-hour days in the shop, coming home covered in grease, exhausted in a way that filming never made me tired. And people would ask, "Why are you doing this? You're Keanu Reeves. You don't need to be building motorcycles." And I'd think, exactly. I don't need to. That's precisely why it matters. Because when you're doing something you don't need to do, when you're choosing it purely because it brings you alive, you're finally free. But the biggest decision, the one my family still doesn't fully understand, came a few years ago. I was sitting in yet another strategy meeting about my brand, my image, my next career move, and the publicist was talking about social media presence and staying relevant and connecting with younger audiences. And I just walked out, literally stood up in the middle of the meeting and left. I got on my motorcycle and I rode for hours, up through the canyons, until my mind was quiet enough to hear what I actually wanted. What I wanted was to become invisible. Not professionally, I still loved acting, still loved the craft. But personally, I wanted to disappear from the machinery of fame. I wanted to be able to take the subway without it being a news story. I wanted to eat lunch in a park without someone's entire perception of me being filtered through their phone camera. I wanted my private life to actually be private. So I made a decision that in Hollywood is considered career suicide. I started saying no to almost everything outside of the work itself. No to the celebrity industrial complex. No to the carefully managed image. No to the performance of being Keanu Reeves, the idea, the brand, the commodity. I just be whoever I actually was, moment to moment, and let the work speak for itself. My team was horrified. "You can't just opt out of fame," they said. "That's not how this works. And they were right, you can't opt out entirely when you're at a certain level. But you can stop feeding it. You can stop performing it. You can live so ordinarily that your extraordinariness becomes unremarkable. I started taking the subway. I sat on benches and ate sandwiches. I had conversations with strangers who sometimes recognized me and sometimes didn't. I gave up my seat to people who needed it more. I tipped service workers generously but quietly. I lived like someone who just happened to be an actor, not someone whose identity was entirely consumed by being an actor. And something magical happened. I became happy, not the manic. Reaching happiness we're sold by culture, not the happiness that requires constant validation and achievement, but a quiet, steady happiness that came from alignment. My outer life finally matched my inner truth. I wasn't pretending anymore, not on screen, where I chose projects that resonated with something real in me, and not off-screen, where I just existed as a human being trying to be decent and present and alive. Now, let me bring this together, because there are lessons in this chaos of decisions that my family thought were self-destructive, but that I knew were self-creating. First, I learned that loss is not the end of meaning, but the beginning of it. When everything you think matters is taken away, what remains is what actually matters. For me, that was presence, connection, the texture of lived experience. I learned to stop mourning what I didn't have and start noticing what I did, this breath, this moment, this small kindness I could offer. Second, I learned that wealth is a trap if you believe it equals security. The more I accumulated, the more I had to protect. The more I had to protect, the more rigid and afraid I became. But when I started giving it away, I discovered a strange paradox. I felt richer, because my worth was no longer tied to my net worth. I couldn't lose what defined me because what defined me wasn't something that could be taken. Third, I learned that authenticity is not a destination but a practice. Every day, I have to choose whether to perform the version of myself that's expected or to be the version that's honest. Most days, I choose honest. Some days, I still perform because it's easier or kinder or necessary. But I know the difference now, and that knowing changes everything. Fourth, I learned that success and fulfillment are not synonyms. I was wildly successful by every external measure while feeling empty. And I've been less concerned with conventional success while feeling genuinely fulfilled. The culture tells us these should correlate. They don't. Success is what others can measure. Fulfillment is what you feel when you're alone with yourself at 3 in the morning. Fifth, I learned that the most radical thing you can do in a culture obsessed with accumulation is to let go. Not in a performative minimalism way, but in a deep, cellular way. Let go of control. Let go of the story you tell about who you should be. Let go of the future you're trying to force into existence. Let go and discover what's actually here when you stop reaching for what isn't. Here's the pattern I see now. Looking back at all these decisions that confused my family and friends, every single one was about choosing being over seeming, choosing presence over prestige, choosing truth over comfort. The thread connecting them all was a willingness to let go of what I was supposed to want in favor of what actually made me feel alive. Our culture is built on a lie that more is better, that success is measured externally, that security comes from control. But I lived the counterexample. I had more than most people dream of, and it didn't protect me from loss. I had success by every measure, and it didn't make me happy. I had control over my image and brand and career, and it made me feel trapped. The truth I discovered is this: we're all going to lose everything. That's not pessimism, that's physics. Everything we love, everything we build, Everything we are will eventually be gone. The only question is whether we'll live openly and authentically in the face of that truth, or whether we'll spend our precious, limited time building elaborate defenses against the inevitable. I chose to live openly, and what I found on the other side of that choice was not the destruction my family feared, but a kind of freedom I didn't know existed. The freedom that comes from having already survived your worst fear. The freedom that comes from realizing you're not your accomplishments or your possessions or your public image. You're the awareness that experiences all of that and then lets it go. This brings me to the philosophical heart of everything I've been trying to say. We live in a culture that's terrified of impermanence. We build monuments to ourselves, careers, bank accounts, legacies trying to deny the fundamental truth that everything is temporary. But what if impermanence isn't the enemy? What if it's the very thing that makes life precious? When I lost Ava, when I lost Alexandra, I lost my ability to pretend things last forever. I lost my innocence about control. I lost my faith in the bargain we all make with life that if we do everything right, we'll be protected from loss. But in losing all of that, I gained something infinitely more valuable. The ability to be fully present right now. Because I know this is all there is. I'm not saying I'm enlightened. I'm not saying I've figured it all out. I still have days where I'm anxious about the future. I still have moments where I grasp for control. I still sometimes wish I could go back to believing the comfortable lies, but I can't unknow what. I know I can't unfeel what I've felt, and honestly, I wouldn't want to. Because here's what I've discovered. When you stop trying to outrun death, metaphorical or literal, when you stop trying to build structures that will outlast you, when you stop performing a version of yourself designed to be impressive, you finally get to live, really live, not the curated, Instagram version of life, but the messy, complicated, often painful but occasionally transcendent reality of being a temporary consciousness in a temporary body with this brief orbit. Unity to experience something. And that experience, that raw presence, is what I choose now. Every weird role I take that doesn't make financial sense. That's me choosing experience over security. Every $1 million I give away. That's me choosing freedom over accumulation. Every time I take the subway or eat a sandwich on a bench or talk to a stranger, that's me choosing to be here, in this moment, in this life, as this person, rather than performing for some imaginary future where I've finally done enough to deserve peace. I want to tell you something that might sound dark, but is actually the most liberating truth I know. You're going to die having not done most of what you hoped to do. You're going to die with dreams unfulfilled and plans incomplete and potential unrealized. That's not a bug, that's a feature. Because if you could complete everything, if you could fulfill every dream, if you could realize every bit of potential, what would be the point of any of it? The reaching is the point. The trying is the point. The being here dash right dash now dash doing dash this imperfect thing is the entire point. My family didn't expect me to give away millions. They didn't expect me to choose strange roles over blockbusters. They didn't expect me to start a motorcycle company or to opt out of the fame machine or to keep showing up so ordinarily after such extraordinary loss. They expected me to either fall apart or to double down on success as a defense. Against pain, I did neither. I did something they couldn't have anticipated because I'd learned something they hadn't been forced to learn. That the only thing we really have is right now. And right now is always enough if we're actually in it. So here's what I want you to understand. Your pain, your loss, your failure, your confusion, none of that is the end of your story. It's not even a detour. It's the story. It's the thing that, if you let it, will crack you open to what actually matters. And what actually matters is so much simpler than we've been taught. It matters that you showed up today. It matters that you were kind to someone who needed it. It matters that you felt something true, even if it hurt. It matters that you're here, reading this, trying to make sense of your own life. That's enough. You're enough. Not when you achieve the next thing or accumulate the next thing or become the next version of yourself. Right now, as you are, incomplete and uncertain and still reaching. That's the whole deal. I'm 60 years old as I tell you this. I've lived a life that from the outside looks extraordinary. And parts of it have been. But the most extraordinary moments weren't the movie premieres or the magazine covers or the millions in the bank. They were the quiet ones. The morning I made coffee for a neighbor. The time I helped a tourist find their way. The conversation with a crew member about loss. The rides up the canyon on my motorcycle with no destination. Those moments when I wasn't Keanu Reeves, the idea, but just a person, here, alive, paying attention. That's what my family didn't expect, that I choose being a person over being a person of importance. That I choose ordinary presence over extraordinary absence. That I'd find my way back to something real by letting go of everything I thought made me real. And if there's one thing I hope you take from my story, it's this: you don't have to wait for a loss to teach you what I learned. You don't have to lose everything to discover what matters. You can choose, right now, to stop performing and start being. To stop accumulating and start experiencing. To stop reaching for some future moment when you'll finally be enough and realize you already are. The decision my family didn't expect wasn't really about money or credit or fame. It was about choosing to live awake instead of half asleep. Choosing to feel everything instead of numbing the hard parts. Choosing to be here, really here, for whatever time I have left. That choice changed everything. It cost me nothing that mattered and gave me everything that does. You have that same choice. Right now. In whatever circumstance you find yourself, you can choose to be present instead of perfect. You can choose to be authentic instead of impressive. You can choose to live openly in the face of uncertainty instead of building walls against it. It won't be easy. People might not understand. Your own family might worry you've lost your way. But you'll know in that quiet place where truth lives that you finally found it.